Thank you all for coming and welcome. My name is Eric Martinson. I'm with the Public Service Commission. The Commission's designated moderator for technical conference that's been noticed in docket number 18-057-07, Dominion Energy Utah's gas line coverage letter. I think it would be beneficial for us to go around the room and introduce ourselves to each other. As that's going on, I'll have a sign-in sheet if you kindly see that your information gets jotted down. Just a name and the organization whom you're representing. We'll start with Mr. Orton.
Thank you. I'm Eric Orton with the Division of Public Utilities.
Doug Wheelwright, Division of Public Utilities.
Melanie Reif, Utah Public Service Commission.
Robert Moore, AG's office, representing the Office of Consumer Services.
I'm Kelly Mendenhall with Dominion Energy Utah.
I'm Jim Neal with Dominion Products and Services.
Cheryl Murray with the Office of Consumer Services.
George Margette, Counsel for Dominion Energy.
Gary Jeffries, also Counsel for Dominion Energy.
Andrew DeCastro with HomeServe.
Miles Meehan with HomeServe.
Jennifer Clark, also with Dominion Energy.
Sherry Vance with the Public Service Commission. She wants to know you.
No, she wants to.
Maria Ladelfa.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out where to sit. Michelle Beck, Office of Consumer Services. I was getting a lot of hand signals. So
I wants Michelle to sit by us.
I was trying to figure that out.
She picked you, Cheryl.
I didn't know that was an option to sit by Kelly, or I would have chosen that one.
Dave Clark with the Commission.
Judd Cook with Dominion Energy Utah.
Chris Parker from the Division of Public Utilities.
Jeff Einfeld with the Division of Public Utilities.
Michelle Martinez with HomeServe.
Mike Fahey with HomeServe.
Maria Ladelfa, Dominion Products and Services.
Without any further ado, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Dominion.
Perfect. So I'm going to kick us off here. I just want to express my appreciation to HomeServe and Dominion Products and Services. They've traveled a long way to be here, and appreciate their willingness to come and explain a little more about their services and answer some of the questions you had. So I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of how today is set out. We're going to give some foundational background on Dominion Products and Services and on HomeServe that will really be useful as we answer some of the questions that were asked. Then we'll go through some of the key issues, the customer letter, the billing tariff, and the customer list. And then there are some additional questions that really didn't fit anywhere in the presentation about merger commitments and other odds and ends, and so I'll follow those up. So it'll mostly be me presenting, Jim Neal from Dominion Products and Services, and Andrew from HomeServe. So maybe we just kick off with Dominion Products and Services, and I'll let Jim just briefly give an overview of their group and what they're about.
Hey, good morning. I'm the General Manager of Dominion Products and Services. It's a home warranty provider and has been since 1995. Some of the partners that we work with, I guess just a foundational kind of background as we talk about this, and there's going to be a lot more discussion on it. The entities involved in the transaction with HomeServe is Dominion Products and Services. So myself and Maria Ladelfa, I believe, are the only direct representatives from Dominion Products and Services. And I know that's been kind of a confusion as we've kind of gone through this process, and kind of that's on us from a communication standpoint. Hopefully through the docket and the material that's been presented, there's some clarity on it, but I feel like we haven't done a good job of really explaining the relationship. So that'll be part of what I go through. Don't want to go through too much detail here. One of the a couple of the bullets are showing the product lines that Dominion Products and Services has been involved in. If you look at DPS from a big Dominion Energy perspective, it's pretty small potatoes from a financial perspective. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the amount of contracts that we have, but it's roughly 1 million contracts. And those contracts were part of the deal with HomeServe and Dominion Products and Services. So we're going to go into a lot more detail, so I think I'll kind of leave it at that.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
You said those contracts were part of the deal with Dominion Products and Services and HomeServe. What deal do you mean? This immediate small deal, or do you mean a larger, broader deal?
Yeah, so let me just briefly touch on it, and then I think, because I like pictures so you can kind of see it. There's an asset purchase agreement, and then there's a commission agreement. The asset purchase agreement, and again, which I've got a graphic that will show, that's really the kind of the transfer of the contracts that Dominion Products and Services has built up over the years. That's the transaction with HomeServe to sell those. And then there's also a 10-year commission arrangement also with HomeServe and Dominion Products and Services. And that's probably more germane to the proceedings and what we're talking about.
I guess what I'm asking is,
Sure.
the million contracts you sold are not, is there more than those two deals between DPS and HomeServe? I'm asking, the Utah thing is different than a longer ongoing relationship that you've had. Am I right or wrong?
Yes.
Okay, so when you say the deal and you talk about the asset purchase that includes these million contracts or whatever, you're not referring to the agreement to use Dominion's utility customer information to send these letters out on the behalf of
Right,
HomeServe, or are you?
that's under the commission arrangement, the parameters around that.
Okay,
So
so
we're
the
gonna, like, we know that's like one of these, we're gonna go into.
yeah, I just
right.
wanted, as you said, the agreements, I wanted to just make sure I was clear.
Yeah,
with
and
where-
again, that's kind of on us for not, I think in a lot of words, we described it in the responses. But again, hopefully when I put this picture up here and just with what I told you, it'll kind of come together. Again, we're here to kind of answer questions. We spent a lot of time as a team on this slide deck. We've gone through the docket again and again. We've looked at the questions that I believe you and your group submitted. So we think we're going to be fully responsive, but obviously this is why we're here, is to the extent we didn't get, that we were not answering the questions. That's why we've got so many people here. We've got HomeServe folks here. We've got Dominion Energy Utah. We've got Dominion Products and Services. So I don't think anybody's going to leave here not understanding any parts of the deal. Sure.
Could you kindly introduce yourself again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so my name is Jim Neal, N-E-A-L, and I'm the General Manager of Retail, which is basically the Dominion Products and Services. And I've been in that role since April of last year. And I brought Maria, who's been with the group a lot longer. I know the business, I know it well. I was at the negotiation table. I know and understand all that, but if there are questions specifically about how the business was built, she might be a better person to answer some questions on that.
So just for clarification,
Sure.
you work for Dominion?
Yes. So Dominion Products and Services is an unregulated affiliate of Dominion Energy.
And Home Services is under that?
Excuse me?
Home Services operates under that? Is that what you're saying?
That's who the agreement is with, yes, or Dominion
They're a
Products.
third-party provider
Okay.
of services.
So you're not here to speak on behalf of Home Services?
We're here
Nope.
jointly.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're here. So we'll kind of, when we talk about HomeServe, in fact, that's a great segue. And Andrew's going to talk about HomeServe. I do want it as one point of clarification on this issue. So the 1 million contracts, those are related to the customers that Dominion Products and Services were serving in Virginia, Ohio, West Virginia. They basically sold that group of customers to HomeServe as part of the asset purchase agreement. And then this other agreement we'll talk about later in more detail, that was where Dominion Energy Utah kind of came into the, so.
Thanks. Just by way of introduction again, Andrew DeCastro, I run corporate development at HomeServe, been with the company for almost 10 years now. With me is Miles Meehan, who's in charge of our corporate communications. We also have Michelle Martinez with us, who runs all of our account management, and then Mike Fahey, who is our Deputy General Counsel. So just by way of background of kind of who is HomeServe, we thought that would also be helpful. We started about 25 years ago in the UK. We've been in the US for about 15 years, offering similar products and services to what Dominion Products and Services historically did. We've got now contracts across 3.6 million homeowners, 5.6 million policies. We've delivered about close to $400 million in services to our customer base over the past 3 years. We do hundreds of thousands of repairs each year, which equates to roughly 1 repair every 75 seconds. We're accredited A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. We've got, in addition to our partnership with Dominion Products and Services, we are partnered with many of the bellwether investor-owned utilities that you see below. We're also partnered with hundreds of municipalities across the country. Many of these relationships that listed below is very similar to the the agreements that we've executed with DPS. This just kind of gives you a flavor on a national scale about all of our partnerships and our operations. Our core, corporate office is in Norwalk, Connecticut. We've got a 400-plus state-of-the-art contact center in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Locally, we certainly respect and appreciate that the municipalities that we work with in Utah are not the same as the investor-owned states, but we do work with Salt Lake and a couple others locally. We've got about 27,000 customers, and we've done thousands of repairs over the past 12 months alone. In Salt Lake, we do get name and address. We do use their brand pretty extensively, and we've got about 28% of Salt Lake customers enrolled in our program, which is kind of a testament to the effectiveness of the products and the value that the products bring. Yes?
Yes, on the previous slide, you mentioned that you did numerous repairs every year. It's every 75 seconds. Are most of those water repair? I mean, do you track them based on the type of utility it is?
So we don't break it down by product category, as that's kind of proprietary information.
So could you give us a full scope of the utility repairs that you're making?
In terms of,
The range?
Yeah, so the products and services that we offer are very similar to what Dominion historically offered, where we do plumbing products, water heater, line repairs on gas line and electric lines, appliances, HVAC equipments, some of which we do repair only, some of which we do full replacements. So we are really an end-to-end provider of these services, essentially that like homeowners insurance does not cover. There's another provider out in the marketplace you may be familiar with, American Home Shield. They're a whole home warranty provider, which is a little bit different than us, where we offer products and services a la carte. We also predominantly work with utilities where they work with, through the real estate channel and other affinity partnerships. But our products and services list is pretty vast. What we're offering with Dominion is that entire suite of products as well. So gas line, water line, HVAC, and water heater as well.
Are you a public company?
Yes, so we are a public company traded in London with about $3.5 billion of market cap. We just released our annual report. We're on a fiscal year in March, so we actually just released our annual report, which is public earlier this week, I think.
So who is is Home Services owned by someone, or is Home Services its own entity?
So HomeServe USA is a subsidiary of the holding company HomeServe PLC.
And HomeServe PLC is the individual that has the agreement with Dominion?
No, the individual entity is, what's the legal entity, Mike? Is it HomeServe USA Repair Corp?
Repair Management Corp. So, which is subsidiary. I mean, HomeServe PLC is a public company, so that's listed on LSE, owned by institutions and individuals, as any public company in London. That then owns HomeServe USA, which is our ultimate parent company. We have these are all wholly owned subsidiaries. Then we have a wholly owned subsidiary that entered into the agreement with Dominion Products and Services called HomeServe Repair Management.
And is it HomeServe Repair Management that's in the relationships with Salt Lake and other municipalities in Utah?
We typically have a HomeServe USA Corp sign, which is the parent, and HomeServe USA Repair Management sign. So typically both signs.
Can you go back to your slide that you were on? Yes. So I'm noticing that the red dots are HomeServe branded and the blue dots are Partners branded. So explain to me how you decide which is which, and then I have a follow-up question / comment.
Sure. So 2 years ago, and our growth story is a combination of organic business development, where we're working with utilities that have no existing program in place, and then we also have another growth part, which is the acquisition route, which is part of the business that we bought from Dominion Products and Services. About 2 years ago, we acquired a company called Utility Service Partners, which was a company very much like HomeServe, but was dedicated to the municipal space, and with that contained another couple brands. So we operate under a couple brands. One is the Service Line Warranties of America, which is a subsidiary of Utility Service Partners, now a HomeServe company, and then the red dots are HomeServe USA Partners. historically, and again, I've been with the company for 10 years, whether it was an energy or water partner, it was signed with HomeServe USA. It was a HomeServe USA partner. Now, more and more, because we've got this great entity with the Service Line Warranties of America, we typically use that entity to sign up with municipalities. So actually, Salt Lake City contractually is with HomeServe, but the other two are with the Service Line Warranties of America.
And so, and if this is in a later slide, just defer.
Sure.
Who decides then in these partnerships, who drafts the letters to customers? Who decides how it's branded?
So it's a collaborative effort. We work with DPS to jointly come up with the communication. Kind of that brand is critical and important towards the program. So with those partnerships and then many of these partnerships, we're using that name and that brand on the outer envelope. Nothing is sent to customers without our partners' prior approval.
Okay, because I have the distinction of not living in Salt Lake City but being served by Salt Lake City Water, and I get those letters about every 3 months, and I see a very material difference in how the service was presented in the Salt Lake City Water letter and in the Dominion gas line letter, and so that is of interest to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe what I'm hearing is that that material difference is attributed to Dominion Products and Services participation in jointly drafting as compared to Salt Lake City's participation in jointly drafting.
What just out of curiosity, was there anything particular that kind of stood out at the difference?
Absolutely, and I wish I'd brought it because I think I received one in the recent enough that it's on my mail pile. But the one from Salt Lake City comes out as a letter to me from Salt Lake City. I want to explain to you that that we're offering to you this. You know, many customers have had trouble with this, and we want to know we have this product that we're recommending to you. So it's sort of from a letter that's clearly from Salt Lake City, clearly identifying and recommending HomeServe. Whereas Dominion was more of a just under the Dominion letterhead. It was I think very unclear who was recommending it, and HomeServe was only listed in a footnote.
And I think we recognize that's one of the main reasons we're here. One of 2 or 3 other reasons that we're here. So yeah, we're gonna hit that head on and talk about kind of the process. And how that went along.
I just want to.
I don't want to
like
short circuit
while you're
because-
bringing in Salt Lake City, so will I, and say that it was quite materially different, and I get those letters frequently.
And I think they're looking for feedback like that in the presentation, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fair.
While we're on this general subject then, could you describe the nature of the services that you provide if a Salt Lake City customer or an Orem customer or a Clearfield City customer subscribes to the service, as distinct from what was being offered to the Dominion Energy Utah customer?
So with those 3 in particular, it's predominantly water-related products. So it's a water service line coverage, a sewer septic line coverage, and an interior plumbing and drainage coverage. Those are pretty much the 3 products that we're permitted to sell under those agreements with those municipalities. Our typical marketing strategy is we're selling products, specifically line products, that tie closely to the commodity that the utility delivers. So the differentiation is we're selling more gas line policies to Dominion customers. We do not sell any of those energy-related line products to Salt Lake customers.
But you did sell water line to Dominion customers,
We did.
right?
We did. So we did take a piece of the file and also sell water line as well. But it's not. So we usually we're able to sell more products with our energy partners than we are with municipalities.
And I think they did that because from Dominion Products and Services standpoint, from all of our other Dominion affiliates, Waterline is our #1 selling program. That's the one people really seems to resonate with them and that they enroll in. So we gave that feedback to HomeServe, just said, hey, this is the program that most people seem to be interested in. There's other programs that follow right behind it, but we wanted to make sure that at least a small subset of that marketing that went out had that Waterline program to see what the reaction was in Utah.
I'm not mistaken, Dominion is a gas utility, not a water utility, is that right? So,
That was the point of my question, but they said they focus on that, but offer beyond that.
So in this particular case, it was a mailing of 500 and some odd thousand pieces that were gas line, and it was 50,000 pieces that were water. So it was just a test in order to validate a data point based upon DPS's past history.
So I think some of us, at least, are learning about the water side of this for the first time. And I'm just hoping that at some point in your presentation, you'll give us some detail on what that offering was and how it was priced. And because I mean, I've just sort of observed that in my own general experience, there's a great deal of difference between the intervals at which people need help with their plumbing, with their drain clearance, that kind of thing, and the likelihood that they'll need some assistance with repairing a gas line in the walls of their home. And so I'd like to understand your thinking about that and how it relates to your business model and Dominion Products and Services business model.
Do you remember what the price of the water, Michelle, was? I don't recall offhand.
It was $5.49.
$5.49. So the prices were for gas line and water line were $5.49. We do a lot of direct mail. We work with a lot of utility partners. We typically offer line products is our kind of core marketing strategy in acquisition. Once that customer is enrolled in a water line or a gas line product, what we do is cross-sell them water heater or cooling or heating products, which typically are much higher in price. Our studies find that if we market a water heater or an HVAC product that's anywhere from $10 to $15 a month, it has much less higher enrollment rates, but if it's sold on a cross-sell basis, it's got much higher adoption rates. So those other products that you mentioned, they are available online if a customer does go to the web to enroll, which many customers did in this case as well, and to purchase other products. And when they do call our contact center and they say, what other products do you have available, we also have that laundry list that we can offer them.
So, okay, I know you said it was proprietary, but when you talk about the numbers of repairs that you make, I have some pretty keen interest in how many of those are water heater and clearing a clogged drain and et cetera in relation to repairing a gas line in a residence.
It's relative magnitude.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so maybe not precise numbers, but I don't have any idea how to understand that, except there seems to me to be a pretty significant distinction.
Maybe I can help address ways we can get that data to you. We are in a technical conference that was noticed as public, and if you want to wait until the end to discuss some of it, we can. Some of the numbers that you're talking about, HomeServe believes is proprietary and is willing to provide. We are working, and in fact intend to file today, a motion for highly confidential treatment that would give the commission, the office, the division access to that data. In fact, the office has already requested some of it. So we do intend to make that available, but we recognize that it's a sensitive piece of information.
Sure. And so I really appreciate you mentioning that, and I think then just knowing that that process is going to overlay this and that there'll be a way for the information.
Absolutely.
I was pretty confident the questions were being asked, but I wanted to make sure that there would be some way to get to the end of the road. So
yeah,
knowing that, I'm fine. We won't need to deal with it today. But.
And I think we appreciate the feedback because you'll see some of that data in comments, undoubtedly.
When you sent out the water letters, did they go to people in Salt Lake City as well, or people other than in Salt Lake City?
Other is what Miles is saying.
Okay, thank you.
Is that in part because of some sort of exclusivity arrangement with Salt Lake City that also is in the contract with DPS?
I don't recall that being the reason. Our typical practice is when a customer is enrolled under the Salt Lake brand, we try to suppress those customers quite honestly and not sell them a similar product to create additional customer confusion. So that's just kind of a standard practice that we employ. It's the exclusivity part is not really part of it.
Because when I received my letter from Salt Lake City, I was like, what is this? And so I called, and they said, well, we're offering the service and we get a percentage of that. So the Salt Lake City gets some money too, to the extent that people enroll.
Yes.
And so, so that's what my question was directed.
So if customers enroll in your waterline program that you have sent out based on the Dominion list of customers, does the commission agreement cover that as well, or is it only gas line?
Both.
It's all products.
Oh, yeah, any product that's offered.
So, excuse me, to follow up on Carol's inquiry, so is it correct to assume that a similar arrangement exists between HomeServe and DP and Dominion, like the arrangement with Salt Lake City, so that when customers sign up, that there's some sort of financial arrangement that Dominion then receives?
Yeah, these are great questions. I mean, if you wouldn't mind indulging us just for like 5 minutes. I mean, we understand, like, we anticipated and understand like all of the questions, all the good questions. I think if you can just give us a couple minutes to kind of get to those slides.
Okay.
And I apologize. I mean, maybe that's not how these
And
things are supposed to
No,
work.
I'm going to say, I think you're right. I think we're sort of.
No, I mean, these are all things that like we know are core to the concerns.
I'm going to suggest we all sort of.
I don't want to do that. I mean, I don't want to do that.
Some stuff on the table.
Yeah, we have one slide that talks about the relationship between DEU, DPS, and HomeServe. So
and I'm sure there'll be
when
follow-on
we get there, if
questions
we haven't
about
answered
that.
your question, we can circle back.
Thank you.
And this was just another slide we thought were relevant, and we talked about the Utah partnerships, but the surrounding states of Utah, we've got numerous partnerships have delivered several $1 million in services across those territories as well. And again, I think just to reiterate, we've got 27,000 policyholders in Utah. This is excluding the DPS enrollments. And we've done 2,400 jobs in the past 12 months, which again, I just think is a testament to the value that our products and services bring.
Okay. I only have 2 suits, and I got the one that the jacket's way too small, so you guys will indulge me. I'm going to take this one. And I make tie off too, because I'll be the best for a tie.
Welcome to the West.
I couldn't button the top button anyway, so. I think some of these I'm going to go through pretty quickly because we'd asked and answered some of these things. And again, I don't want to get into this in too much detail. Really, the only reason to put this in here is, again, we kind of went through every single question and went through the entire docket. And we knew there'd probably be some stakeholders here that maybe hadn't read every piece along the way. So we've included some of that just for information purposes. And I'll go through those pretty quick. But one specific question, which we've already covered, is what is in play here? And these are the things that Andrew's already talked about. When we look at kind of, we're going to talk about the relationship between Dominion Energy, DPS, and HomeServe. But the real reason, especially from a Dominion Energy perspective, and from a Dominion overall entity perspective, that we do this is customers like it. Now, I realize maybe if we did a survey now, it might not go so well, but at the end of the day, we've experienced through surveys, independent surveys that we've done, HomeServe has done the same thing. People who sign up for these things like them. And the people who actually have repairs love them. So it's kind of, everybody has a different risk aversion for these types of programs. But from a company perspective, we're all about the customers and we like happy customers. So we didn't want to enter into an arrangement with HomeServe where we just said, here, take everything, we don't want any part of this. we like that fact that the customer is happier with these programs. You know, why wouldn't sometimes the utility or company provide that service? They may not have the resources to do it. HomeServe is in the business, like that's what they do, like that's their sole business. It's from a Dominion Energy perspective, Marie and I think it's really important, but it's really kind of small potatoes from a big Dominion Energy perspective. So for some utilities or companies, it may not be a core competency. We kind of think it is, but we've got how many people before this in our organization? 50 people dedicated to it, and HomeServe has
900.
Hundreds?
Yeah,
hundreds. And this kind of, our focus is really kind of on the customer thing. So when we think about these relationships, and if you put me back 2 years prior to coming into retail, I didn't really understand the business that well. And you know, you guys, some of you maybe understand it, some don't. I was probably where you guys are a couple years ago. But these are really the important things from our perspective. It's the brand, like from the customer service perspective and improving customer satisfaction. Getting them to open the letter and have that opportunity is important. The branding is important. It's the industry, that's a big deal, having that brand. The convenience of having it on bill, and I know that's a topic that we have to go into a lot more detail, which we will. But that's a good customer convenience. That's a real positive for the customer to be able to have that show up on their bill. And then the customer information, and again, I know there's more that we need to hit specifically on that. But if we have the customer information, good data set, and typically utilities have very good data sets, it minimizes the chance of mismailings and additional customer confusion. So those are kind of the three kind of key things when you look at the products and services business. Okay, so this is jumping into, we've hit a little bit of this, I've kind of talked to this, and this is simplified a little bit, but really this is kind of the setup. So Dominion Energy is our parent company. You know, Big D is the ticker, and the Dominion Energy logo is owned by, and I'm probably not using the right terms, but it's owned by the parent company. So, and again, this is by no means the whole Dominion Energy business. There's you know, merchant gas. There's a whole lot of different areas, but I'm going to highlight the ones that are kind of in play here. We have our utility in Virginia, in Ohio, and of course here in Utah. When we look at products and services, it is an unregulated affiliate, as I mentioned, of the parent company, Dominion Energy. The parent has, I don't know the right terminology, licensed the Dominion Energy logo to Dominion Products and Services.
Yeah, the subsidiaries are able to use the logo, you know, to benefit from the logo. And in a legal sense, the benefits inure or carry over to the subsidiaries, including the utilities as well as DPS.
Is it your view that the Dominion Energy logo in Utah has significant value apart from its existence with its coexistence with the utility? That is to say that if the utility were not branded Dominion Energy, but were still branded, say, Questar, that a Dominion Energy mailer would have anything approaching the same value as if this had been out as a Questar mailer?
So if I want to make sure I understand.
Does Dominion Energy mean anything to Utah customers apart from its existence as their gas utility?
There's another way to say that if it was still Questar Gas and the Dominion Energy logo kind of came in
on the
territory,
mailer.
I think that, and I don't know Andrew or who might want to address that, but I mean, there is value with that recognition of the customers and that brand.
So you think a significant chunk of Utah customers would recognize the Dominion Energy brand apart from it being the utility now? That's the question I'm asking.
I don't know if they would recognize it as much as they might still sign up. Like HomeServe has their own brand and they're not a utility, and they do market in areas where they're not partnered up with a utility, and I think you guys still have significant enrollments in those areas, marketing under that brand. So I think there is some benefit to, because the people know the Dominion Energy brand here now, but I think there are still gonna be people to sign up. So I don't think it's a total correlation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the
100%.
point I'm driving at is that it seems to me that the HomeServe deal would have been valued at a lot lower amount if not for the fact that Dominion Energy's logo was shared, that Dominion Products and Services logo is shared with the utility whose information was sold.
Yeah, I mean, there's value in that brand. I don't know if somebody, you know, I mean, I get what you're saying.
I think the nature of affinity marketing, right, is people that recognize the brand are more apt to sign up.
Sure.
I think you're driving at that point.
And that's what I'm getting at, is I'm not convinced that a significant number of Utahns would recognize the Dominion Energy brand if it weren't their gas utility.
I think that's probably fair.
Yeah.
So just, again, just from a fact base, like what Dominion Products and Services is, I mentioned that just over 1 million contracts. So it's split up into two groups, what we call kind of our affiliate groups and contracts, which in Virginia, I'm not sure how long we've been in Virginia, I mean, probably since 1995.
It was close.
And then Ohio, so a total of 600,000 contracts. And we hadn't done any launches, although we had planned under DPS to do launch before the HomeServe deal came in. We also have basically kind of the flip arrangement. We have these partnerships with, for example, like the scanning companies, Public Service in North Carolina, South Carolina Electric and Gas, where the business model is essentially the same in that Dominion Products and Services, again, before this deal, they actually serviced the contract. They were like the service provider, but the marketing materials went out under the logos of PSNC and SCO. And that's, the deals are all a little bit different, but all of those are very similar with respect to kind of how the business model is set up. And it's kind of what, like, their business model is very similar, more, a lot bigger, but.
How long has the West Virginia Gas Company been a subsidiary, and why aren't you working in that region?
Yeah, I might defer this to somebody, but I know I left it out for, probably might have told me to put it in there, but it's a really, really small part of our business, and like, I don't know.
I think the reason it didn't expand in the same way that the other affiliates did was because it's a lot more rural, the territory for Dominion Energy West Virginia. So we found that people's water lines sometimes were very long, or they weren't connected to the water system at all. You know, we found that in a lot of different programs. Maybe people didn't have HV, you know, heating and cool, or at least cooling. So we weren't getting very good response rates in relation to the amount of people that we had to mail to. So we didn't really focus on that area nearly as much as we did some of the other affiliates.
So for completeness, it probably should.
Right.
Yeah.
But, right. I mean, they still have the gas line that comes from the meter to their appliances.
Yes, so we still have programs offered there, or we did.
They're like Wyoming is to us, just a very small portion of Dominion's, or Dominion Energy Ohio's.
Okay.
So this next click through a bunch of stuff on the screen, but I mentioned earlier with a good foundational question, like how are these arrangements set up? And again, I'm not sure exactly how clear it would have been just reading the docket, but the asset purchase agreement with HomeServe, basically the deep, as you can see over here, the DPS business went to HomeServe, and then there was a value exchange back to Dominion Products and Services for that piece of it.
So,
and then there's the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, that's fine.
Sure.
So the asset purchase agreement covered 0 contracts in Utah. Were any Utah assets included in the asset purchase agreement? I guess what I'm driving at is, what was in there that affected Utah customers? Was that where the agreement was to have the partnership and do these mailings and provide customer information?
That's, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, that's all in the commission agreement. So part of the value exchange on the commission agreement is Dominion Products and Services and the business that it had built. And
so
They basically gave over these two values. So a non-compete, so basically DPS said, we're not gonna go into those territories.
So did the asset purchase agreement cover anything in Utah? Did it require you to vacate Utah for HomeServe, or what in there pertains to Utah?
Chris, I think it might have, if you can, just give me a second to
Sure.
look so I give you the right information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks. I'll find it.
So, and the other thing was, again, the kind of flow, I'm probably not saying this right again, but kind of the flow through rates on the logo to HomeServe. So that's what I tried to say in words. Hopefully that matches how you guys were thinking about it. But this is kind of the big picture deal. And again, I'll probably, like, we're hitting a bunch of background stuff, and we know what the mailing is an issue, and we need to figure out where we need to go with that.
I do have a question here. If you're done, if you're done, what about, where is the agreement to use customer for Dominion to give HomeServe customer addresses, and then also to create the identifiers?
I'm gonna hit that probably in like 2 slides.
Okay,
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's a good kind of.
I think I had a question on that slide, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
So is the non-compete, does that mean that Dominion Product and Services will not compete?
Yeah.
So it just means that DPS will not compete with HomeServe?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. So process relationships, and again, I kind of think in pictures. This is just kind of a big picture of some of the flow. And we're going to very quickly jump into some of the core issues. And I apologize for keep saying that, but there's Dominion Energy Utah, Dominion Products and Services, and HomeServe. Again, the arrangement, the APA and the commission agreement are down here. So, and again, this is not the only, but we got a whole section on kind of that particular issue that we need to dive into, make sure everybody's clear on and where we go from here. So there's customer information, which comes in name and address. We're going to talk again more specifically about that. There was a decent amount in the docket about those arrangements. I'm going to cover this in much more detail too, but the actual approval, the official approval of the marketing material is a DPS function. However, as part of the DPS process, we go through our Dominion Energy corporate branding. There's a branding guidelines that we have to go through. So we look at the material that HomeServe brings in, and that's why we call it kind of joint marketing. It's basically, it's kind of their approach. If you looked at DPS and its marketing material and how we did things, we did it a little bit differently. They've got a little bit different model. But they're kind of the originators of it, but we come in and we have certain things that we need to look at. From a DEU Utah perspective, and I think Kelly may hit this a little bit more, is there's an awareness of the campaign. As we went through the process, there was feedback from folks at DEU and some of the concerns that basically customers had. We obviously did not adequately address, so again, that's something that we need to talk some more about. So there's that. Those things allow the program administration and HomeServe to do what they need to do. Again, whole section on billing tariff that we'll get to, but basically there's an agreement between Dominion Energy Utah and DPS on the billing tariff. Probably several folks in the room are probably involved in some of that process. I know Judd and others kind of shepherded that third-party process along. And then finally, that basically sets up the stage for the customers to get the benefit of coming off bill. So again, that's kind of big picture. We're going to kind of get into the details.
May I ask a question? And this might be better here for Jennifer.
Customer information, regardless of what state statute.
So as a customer of Dominion Energy, I have an account. That account has a mailing address associated with it. It has a property address associated with it. I might consider that information very private and very personal. What authority does Dominion have to share that information without my consent with a third party?
So I can speak to it a little bit. Not having been the attorney that did all this research, Utah law clearly describes what is considered public information and what is considered private information. And Utah law considers name and address to be public information. I'm not sure that by itself completely answers your question. I think your question then goes to, is there some rule or regulation or something somewhere that would prohibit that sharing? And my understanding is there is not. That said, that's part of what we're here to talk about, what should happen,
And when
not what
when
can happen.
customers sign up, though, that's part of
Right.
what they're agreeing to. That means, and again, I want to make sure.
And I was getting to that one.
Yes, sir.
Yes, so, but with respect to that, you say when customers sign up, they agree to share X. So when customers sign up, I'm taking that as correct. Customers have signed up with the gas utility. Now, there's obviously value in the gas utility's customer information, and DPS acquired that asset from the utility. What did DPS pay the utility for that asset?
I'm not sure, like the first part, so they, when they sign up, they're signing up with HomeServe.
No, okay, so her question goes back further than that. Melanie's question went to the sharing of utility customer information with another entity. And in this case, it can be viewed as one of either two entities or both, DPS and HomeServe. And my question gets to, by what did DPS pay the gas utility for that customer information? Or how did it acquire it if it wasn't purchased from the gas utility? Because it seems clear to me that DPS sold a utility asset, that is the customer information, or access to it to a third party. And I'm just trying to ascertain what DPS paid for that information or what consideration was given for that from the utility.
And I guess as part of it, and somebody may need to help me out here, but as part of it, there was not a discrete, we're going to pay, you know, there's going to be payment for the customer. I mean, it was kind of an overall business deal, and that customer information was part of the deal.
Sure, but I
There's no
guess
specific
what I'm-
breakout of what that.
Yeah, what I'm getting to is DPS didn't have utility customer information unless it got it from the utility. And my question is, how did DPS get utility customer information from the utility, and what consideration was given for that information? Or did DPS just get it off the broader parent company's computer system and sell it?
Can I'm looking at my attorney. Can I just explain
Yeah, I
what
think you
happened?
should.
Okay, well, I just don't
Yeah.
want to, you know.
Yeah, no, please do.
You're not within striking distance, so my understanding is that and this is one of the questions, so I'm going to hit it right now. The Vice President and General Manager of Dominion Energy Utah, subject to legal review, agreed it was okay for Dominion Energy Utah to share that information with Dominion Products and Services.
Okay, so it was just straight up the utility agreed to share the information
Yes.
with the sister company. When was that decision made relative to the approval of the third-party tariff and the HomeServe contract?
So it would have been last year. I'm not sure exactly when last year.
October, sort of October timeframe.
Before the tariff approval, the third-party billing tariff approval?
Before the final order on the tariff, yes.
Okay.
Well, I guess there were two pieces to the tariff, right? We had the approval, and then we had
that
the
reconsideration.
reconsideration. So it was probably somewhere
between the
in that
two.
time frame.
Yeah, and also provided and shared, subject to strict confidentiality terms pursuant to our privacy policy, which, you know, the companies need to adhere to. So it's all within certain guidelines and.
Sure, and I guess the reason for my questions is, I mean, the privacy aspect is one component, and it's one we ought to deal with. But it's also with regard to the value, and it seems to me that DPS sold a value created by somebody else. The value was access to the utility customers' information, the ability to mail to them with the same brand that their utility had, and that value, it seems to me DPS didn't do anything separate to create that value, and now I'm getting into argument and I should stop.
Let me just say this, Chris. Yeah, I think this questions would be better, more to our point, or more informative for all of us, if we wait until after we understand more about what the contractual arrangements were, what was acquired, what was paid for it, who transferred it to whom. And I know we're all anxious to get to the bottom line of this, but is that okay?
Absolutely.
Those, we have intense interest in those, but
yeah,
let me let you present them.
So can I ask one question here? You talked about your privacy policy, but customer information has now gone from Dominion Energy Utah to DPS and now to HomeServe. So now 3 entities, and I'm assuming 3 separate, well, maybe not between DPS and DEU, but separate computer systems now house that information. And are you going to talk about the security arrangements of your computer systems?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to go through these next couple slides because, again, not having been through this and not knowing exactly the questions we're getting, and knowing that we're other stakeholders, we're going to be in here, we put together just kind of some timelines, and I think that was a request also to make sure that people understood kind of just sequence of events. Again, this is just factual info. So this is timeline like prior to the Utah mailing, and the reason we did this is because it is specific to some of the questions that have been asked as far as like timing and when certain things happen. So the initial contact, feel free to jump in. The initial contact was back in November of 16 from and again this was to HomeServe USA to DPS or HomeServe Repair Management. We did some preliminary deal evaluation early in the year. Our extensive due diligence. So Dominion Energy's is a very big company, and there's certain processes. There's investment review committees. It goes to the board of directors to get approved. But a precursor to that is a full-blown risk assessment, and it's looking at everything. It's looking at customer impact. You guys, I'm sure, all have experience with that type of stuff. It's customer benefit. So as we kind of worked through that, we figured we had a deal on the table. So. And again, I don't have the exact dates here, but somewhere in the latter part of that period or mid part of that period, we started actually like negotiating the terms in and around the asset purchase agreement and then also the commission agreement. The asset purchase agreement was signed October 18th. And again, we knew the billing tariff thing was going to be a question as far as like when sequential events and things happen. So we put that on there. The commission agreement, which again is kind of, will cover the letter and things like that, was signed mid-December. As we kind of look at like the letter and things going out, like HomeServe had a lot of history, we have a lot of history. The type of letter that got sent out, and this is not an excuse for saying, why was everybody upset? Like we get it. Like we know that changes have to be made. We need to figure out kind of where to go from here. But we actually in Virginia and Ohio, it's different markets than Utah. We did very similar processes, diligence. The process, which I'm going to show a little bit more detail, looking at the art or the content of the mailings, and we did those mailings in Virginia and Ohio. And I don't know the numbers that we did. And
like 1.4 million, I think.
1.4 million. And and I'm not sure who could speak to this, but I'm not sure we got any negative, feedback from the mailings. Did we get questions? I'm sure we did. Like anytime something goes out like this, people read it and they understand parts of it, and some of it, we don't, try to put everything in there, but there's legitimate questions that come out. So I'm sure we had some calls on questions. But anyway, that was, again, just a data point. That was the same time that we kind of went through the process for review on the Utah. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
In those other markets, did you send them at the same time that you were doing the Utah marketing campaign?
No, the marketing campaigns are set up basically. I guess there's a business planning process around that, but they're typically independent and scheduled a year out or maybe even further out. So it's kind of an independent process, and I don't think there'd be a reason, especially with the logistics and all the work that goes into putting the campaign together, that you would do them like all at one time.
So did you have this kind of an arrangement with HomeServe in your other markets as well, or is this
the precursor to us going out with the kind of the Dominion logo with DPS in those areas. I mean, that was with HomeServe, it was the same letter, it was all the same, everything else was kind of the same as the process and the letters in Utah. Is that fair? Am I saying that right?
Yep. Is Virginia a choice state like Ohio?
Where that,
Choose
this
your
was like
supplier?
It was
electric
It was
utility.
to our, it was for our electric utility.
Is it, do they have
And gas as well.
Don't have to.
choice?
Yes, Virginia is a gas and electric choice state.
Thanks. And I, you know, we talked about, like, again, just fact-based information that went out, and I don't want anybody to think that, like, us showing the press release that went out is like a, hey, we told everybody something was going on, and it's absolutely not that. It's more just fact-based. But there was a press release that went out.
Well, can I just jump in on this
Yeah,
slide
absolutely.
before you move? So there's been a lot of talk about, and there's one question in here about the timing of the asset purchase agreement versus the tariff versus the commission agreement. So I just want to point these 3 dates out because they're important. Because if you recall, the asset purchase agreement was really just DPS selling its existing book of customers to HomeServe. And so there were 0 Utah customers from HomeServe. So if the tariff had been approved, which it was, really there were 0 customers involved, and this agreement really remains unchanged. If the commission had, you know, rejected this application and we weren't allowed to do this in Utah, this agreement would have still had 0 Utah customers in it. So the important agreement for Utah was really the commission agreement, because this was kind of backwards looking. This is kind of going forward how the arrangement will work with all of the utilities, or with all of the jurisdictions. So I just wanted to point that out, because I know that was a question of concern.
And also, I got a question on the slide too.
Oh, sure.
I'm trying to be disciplined about this.
That
but-
does.
So the initial unsolicited contact from HomeServe to DPS, that was the beginning of the totality of the relationship between those two entities. In other words, none of this kind of business was being done under this partnership in any location in the U.S.
That's correct.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. And the other thing.
So the press release, and I know people can't read this, but just highlighted just some of the things about it being an optional plan, a partnership, you know, a Dominion Energy partnering. And again, we're showing this just from a fact base. It went to some media outlets. It obviously, all the stuff that we did to kind of to go through this game, we missed something. Like we didn't do it right. So that's again part of, that's part of why we're here.
Can I ask a question on your
Sure.
press? Do you know how many actually published or relayed that information? You provided it to 13, but they don't always pick it up?
Well, it went out over the National Business Wire, so it's probably appeared on over 1,000 media sites, including the websites of the local stations here. Now, I don't recall whether any of the local entities, including, for example, the Tribune, which I think is the newspaper here in town, I don't believe that they, at this point, covered the story.
So, when it was released in that manner, in what context was it released? Was it a news article? Was it an ad?
So the way that we do this is we distribute it through the newswire services that are available to companies, and so we did it on a national basis. But then in addition to that, Dominion Energy provided us their contacts with all the 13 main media outlets that are within the territory here, and a number of contacts within each one of those. So we provided each one of those contacts with an email introducing the partnership, as well as providing them
That doesn't answer my question. How did it go out from the news outlets? Was it a news article, or was it an ad?
It would not have been an ad. It would have either been a news article, and I just don't know right offhand if any of them actually published an article, or it was published just as the press release. In other words, just as it appears there.
And what was the date on that press release again?
April 19th.
Of last year?
Of this year.
Yeah, so it was.
I mean,
it was like a week.
I know you can't generalize from a sample of one, but I mean, I'm the most informed person in the world, but I do read the news every day, and I have never seen that press release.
And I think when that goes out, and again, I'm probably speaking out of turn here, it gets out on, like, you might see it on like websites and such, but it's up to probably the newspaper companies. Like, they probably get inundated with releases. They look through what's relevant to them, and then they decide, totally speaking out of turn, then they decide, what am I gonna put in the newspaper? What am I gonna do? It's a TV station, am I gonna cover that?
And that's exactly right, Jim. I mean, when we did Questar Fueling, we put out press releases occasionally. It was just a release. It was just that paper. It would go out to hundreds and hundreds of different news outlets, and then they'd review those and decide if it was something of public interest, and they'd decide whether to pick it up as a story or as an article, or to put a little blip about it on the news. And so you send it out. The hope is that they pick it up. The hope is that they say, okay, this is newsworthy, we'll put it on. But we obviously can't force anyone to take a story and run it.
Sure.
Related to that, then, I didn't read it, but does it talk about the campaign, including bill inserts that would be letters from Dominion Energy offering the service to gas utility customers?
What? We don't do bill inserts.
Yeah, we don't do bill inserts.
Well, or I'm sorry, but letters to all of the gas
Now,
utility
I'll kind of
customers.
just very quickly read the headline: Dominion Energy to offer Utah customers home repair service plans through HomeServe. And then again, I highlighted the things that I think have been issues. Dominion Energy has partnered with HomeServe USA. HomeServe will offer service plans. They're optional. Again, offered through HomeServe. And then customers who the last thing is, my eyes aren't great. Customers who choose to enroll will be able to pay for coverage on their monthly Dominion Energy bill. The program is completely optional, and the coverage can be canceled at any time.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's germane.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, back to that same screen, and I think Dave might have asked this, but I'm not exactly sure if that's exactly what he was saying. So apart from the press release, which the news media would have the discretion to publish or not, did Dominion Energy Utah share that same information with each and every one of their customers?
I think the answer is no.
No.
Although I think we ought to check. I mean, Darren would know. I don't know for sure.
Not sure how would that.
I mean, the letter is sort of the.
I think the letter
is
would have been
is the equivalent.
Would
it?
Is the press release in a different form.
Yeah. Okay. Unless they read a press release. I don't think Dominion Energy Utah sent out anything saying, stay tuned for.
Okay. Okay. So the timeline again. So now we're kind of getting to why we're here. I know we've hit a lot of the issue, but we obviously need to dig deeper. So the campaign mailings went out, like I said, third week of April, and then they got in the home, April 26th through May 1st. So that's when with all the customer calls and all the concerns, all that. That's basically when the media alert was issued. Two actions that we took, again, which are kind of part of the docket, is once we got this feedback that like something's not right here, we basically just said no more mailings till we figure this out, and that's where we're at. Like, we're not, until we collectively figure out where we go from here, there won't be any more mailings. And then there were, and I've got a chart here on the next page, there were clarification apology letters for the confusion sent to customers. And somebody might need to help me with this. I think it was 300-400. I think it was all the ones that went to you guys.
Yeah, I think it was everybody who, and there's another chart here that shows all the customers that either issued an informal complaint with the division or with the company. We sent a letter to all of those customers.
And I think
I think it was signed by Colleen.
Signed by Colleen.
Yeah.
And tried to, I guess, more clearly, this is what we're talking
This is the same, is the letter the same as the statement that appeared online under her signature?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
I think
was
that's
the exact same. Wasn't it
Is it the exact same, or was it a little more? I can't remember.
Very similar.
It was. I can say
it
was close.
Okay. Yeah.
Back to my earlier question about the news release and about whether customers were given advance notice. Were customers given advance notice that they had any opportunity whatsoever to opt out of their information being shared with a third party?
I think the answer is no.
Yeah, the answer is no.
That's a good question, because your question contained a presumption of, were they given the notice that they had the ability to opt out? I would ask the question. I think it's an appropriate question for this proceeding for us to ask the commission, do customers have that ability? Because I think, without arguing my point in a technical conference, I think that digging into what do we have as protections for customer data will be a very core point to this proceeding, and one that has much further reaching implications than this letter. I think we need to evaluate that from the broader perspective of what are we as an institution, as a kind of collective institution, doing to protect customer data.
I will tell you, from our standpoint, we do have the ability in our billing system, if a customer calls in and says, I do not want my information.
But you don't address it anywhere in your
Right.
terms of services.
We don't, but they have that ability, yeah.
So I can call you up today, and I can say, I want you to put me on a
Do not
solicit
list or solicit list. Do not solicit list. You could call our customer care center today.
So
and get your name put on that.
If you have that in place, how would a customer know about it other than you just mentioning it?
I don't think it's in our tariff or anything.
And if one was to exercise that option, how would that impact the information that's been already shared with third parties?
So I'm just going to pitch that to you.
It would be
It's
flagged
probably
in the
easier to
file,
do.
so DPS, DEU, whoever gets that information from a customer that's contacted them, that gets inputted into the file. So next to your name and address, there's a check next to the file of the column of DNS, do not solicit, and that information gets shared with us to make sure that we do not solicit that customer. And there's an ongoing interchange with do not solicit information.
As long as we
Should
honor
it?
it.
Yep.
Does that extend to HomeServe then also?
Yeah.
That's right, yep.
We honor that.
So you can put the genie back in the bottle, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, not exactly. If you're just marking it do not solicit, that does not mean that you have removed that person from your database.
But
Yeah, if the database
if we
is
took them off the
possessed.
database, then we might solicit them again, right? I mean, by definition, to make sure you don't market that person, you have to keep their name and address and say, don't market this person. And that's how you know, do not send that mail to that person. If you delete their entire record and then you get the name again, you might solicit that person. They're going to be upset because they said, don't solicit me, and you're soliciting them. Right?
It's a data
Because
security
we,
question.
you know, there's other ways to get data. So.
But if the information had been flagged initially, it would have never gotten to you.
Yes, it would have, and it did. So in the file that we received.
No, what I'm saying is that if in fact a customer had told Kelly prior to this information being shared that they did not want their information shared with third parties, their information would not have been shared with you.
That I don't know.
I believe that's what I'd like to confirm, but I believe that is true. But I would need to confirm it with Brad Marcus and some of the people across the way. But I think it's true.
And I think, I'm sorry, because I really want to let you go to your presentation. I think it's also important though, if we had a hypothetical second gas company in this state, who was given the same tariff and was in the same situation, and they said, yeah, no, we don't have that. We don't have that set up in ours. I don't know that they would be violating anything. And so I still think that this is an important, bigger question for the commission.
There's going to be a lot around this particular issue.
Right.
But let's we're getting into a lot of detail on.
So the balance of, the balance of the information, this is just the docket dates. I don't think we need to spend, honestly, any time on that. This is what kind of has got us to the technical conference. Very specific question that we got is the number of inquiries that we got and the number of complaints. So this is the chart that shows the information, and again, it's just factual. This is what came in. The inquiries were just calls that went directly to, I guess, the DEU call center, and then I guess those that were the complaints from a DEU perspective and then DPU were combined and put in the page or whatever color that is.
And my understanding is we had additional inquiries that aren't a part of this number as well, but I don't know the magnitude.
You did or we did?
We did.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe just to clarify, you can see none of us were working on the weekend because there were no complaints received. But the blue bar is the inquiries received by Dominion Energy Utah. Just, what I received this letter, what is it? The yellow bar is a combination of the informal complaints received by the division as well as the complaints received by the company. And I do want to point out that there may be some timing difference on the division may have received them one day and then we received them the next day. So this is all Dominion Energy Utah records. Yeah. This is all Dominion Energy Utah records of when we received this information.
And the only other thing I'll mention, and it's up in the upper right, again, these were questions that got asked. The number of mailings that went out on the gas line campaign were approximately the 550,000 that we talked about. And the number of enrollments in that are, I guess this was as of yesterday?
Monday.
As of Monday, were 8,200 enrollments. Again, that's just a...
Can you say whether, from your experience, that's a robust or not a robust percentage of enrollments?
That's probably in line with our initial expectation, maybe a little lower, quite honestly, but I think it's, quite honestly a testament to the value in the partnership. But it's right around the 174, 175. I think there'll be some more that will trickle in. But we're given some of the challenges and launching it, quite honestly, we're pleased with the responses.
And I think our experience is in line with that as far as the mailings and percentages. So customer letter. and we've hit some of this. So this I've kind of already talked through. Again, the agreement with DPS and HomeServe is very prescriptive about the art. So, and again, I'm going to go through this quick. So they submit the mailings. We do the review, and again, I've talked through this. There's contractual provisions around when people need to, when DPS needs to respond with the input that they've gotten from DEU and from Dominion Energy corporate branding. And then there's from the initial version that we got there, again, obviously we didn't do something right, like we didn't get it totally right, but there were some revisions that we made based on input that we got more broadly probably from DEU, but more specifically from our corporate branding group, and they accommodated all those changes. And then finally, again, per the contract, DPS approves that final. This here, and again, I want to emphasize, this isn't meant to be defensive or like, hey, we did everything was in that letter. Everything that people are concerned about is in the letter. Because again, something didn't happen right because customers were upset and concerned and had questions. But this is, and we don't have a copy of it, and if we put it up there, you wouldn't be able to read it. But these were all the information that was in the letter. I know it was a lot. Does everybody read every single thing and every line item? But the items that are, I guess here and up, and I'll let Maria or somebody help me out, were all on the cover letter. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, in the back.
Yeah, and then this was on the second page?
That was the reply card. Yeah. That they sign in.
Okay, so
that's what there's. Yeah, that's the signature.
Yeah, so this was the signature or reply card. And again, when you think about Dominion Energy Utility, DPS, and HomeServe being a third-party provider, again, I think we obviously didn't do what we needed to do there, but we reference HomeServe that it's optional coverage. I mean, these are some of the things that are kind of in play. The gas line coverage, and I've got another quick slide on that. I think one of the, and this is the line that actually showed up that was on the letter, And it says your gas line from your utility's responsibility up to each gas appliance in your home is your responsibility. I think in talking with Jen and like others about Utah and some of the terminology, and again, we should have caught this, is when people say gas line, they think of, I guess in Utah, it's kind of defined as the gas line coming up to the meter in the home.
Well, yeah, from the meter to everything in the home. Well, the gas line that the utility covers is the line from the street up to the gas meter.
Yeah. And then I think terminology-wise,
Fuel line.
you guys use fuel line from here to there. So again, maybe we need to work on that word.
And it's pretty vague, from your utility's responsibility. I mean, it's fewer letters just to say from the meter. Fewer words, fewer letters.
No, that's great feedback.
And
Well, I mean,
far more precise.
And then again, when the customer signs up, this is, and again, does everybody read every line here? But it does hit the highlights of the program. It's from HomeServe. It's optional. They do agree to provide the data as it relates to the billing process. And then I think underneath of that, that's the reply card. So that's where they would actually sign. One other quick thing I'll hit on this, and we'll keep kind of rolling through this, is I know there was a question, and again, since we have more stakeholders in here, the timing of the mailings and when they hit customers' mailboxes is totally independent of the gas bill, right? I mean, I think we responded that there's 19 gas billing cycles. And I'm sure they're probably, given that, the timing of those coming in, there may have been a subset, I think probably a pretty small subset of people who may have gotten those mailings, separate mailings on the same day. But there was no coordination. HomeServe, they physically mail these out. They've got no idea or information on the billing cycle. So I just wanted to hit that again, just to be in totality to facts. This, and again, there might be some suggestions here, but this was the graphic that was on the second page that identifies just examples of some things that are covered. And these examples are obviously behind the meter and kind of in the home. Again, I'm just putting that out there for fullness. Another thing, I think there was a question or response on this. In the cover letter, right, it has for fastest processing, visit DECustomerHomeRepair.com. I just wanted to show everybody that this is the site that it takes you to. And again, this is just kind of factually what's set up. And then and I think it's because there's different offerings in different states, the first thing they have to do is select which state. And then when they do that, I'm probably speaking for HomeServe, that basically takes them to a HomeServe USA that shows them for your state, here's what you're eligible for. The last thing, which I don't think has been part of the docket, but once a customer signs up, they get a welcome kit. And in the welcome kit letter, there's a cover letter, and it actually comes from the COO of HomeServe. And again, this is just kind of fact-based, getting the information out there. And I don't know if this would be enough to kind of help people if they didn't understand they signed up, but it does, have some of the things that I think people might have been concerned with when they got the initial letter. And basically that kit has everything you would want to know, terms and conditions, phone numbers, all that good stuff. I'm kind of speaking for HomeServe here. And I think this is just a policy thing. If anybody did sign up, like if they, and help me out with this, like if they sign up and call home, or they sign up for the service, and then they get the Dominion bill, or they're like, hey, what the heck is this? They can call HomeServe and basically cancel. And as it relates to this gas line letter, if in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, they see it keep showing up on their bill, and they're like, what the heck happened here? They can call, and they would get a refund all the way back to the beginning of the sign up.
And obviously, to Jim's point, and we certainly want the feedback on the letter, and we're committed to making, modifications and trying to make this work, because we do believe in the program. We stand behind the products and services. And to Jim's point, through really every every touch point of how we communicate with the customers, through the mailings to online enrollments to them calling into the contact center. We think we do a good job, but if there's confusion, we'll do a better job of clearly delineating
This actually isn't in the letter. That's just
Yeah,
the policy.
this
That's what
was
we're
a
talking
specific
about.
question that was raised.
I see.
So the right
So I apologize if
I
that
thought
was.
it was communication to the,
Yeah.
part of the,
How would the customer know that?
I mean, it's part of their, is it?
So sometimes, to be honest, if we, mail that customer a different product at a cross-sell basis, sometimes one person within the household enrolls in something and wasn't quite honestly aware that their spouse may have enrolled. So they'll get a different mailer, they'll call in and they'll say, my husband or wife enrolled, we didn't realize this was optional, we want to cancel, and we'll say, absolutely, go right ahead and we'll refund you.
Promoting marital bliss.
That sounds like my house.
It's also on the letter that I see some of you have over there. It's in the important coverage information where it says that you can call and get a refund. In addition to that, in the terms and conditions, it says the same thing.
I think we only have 5 more slides.
thank you.
Um,
I thank you for the update.
So the billing tariff, as we know, is between Dominion Energy, Utah, and Dominion Products and Services. And I guess this is kind of the way I think about it, and this is, I think, kind of how it is. Like, when this was originally contemplated, it would have been DPS kind of coming into the market and doing campaigning, not the exact marketing material, because we have a little, there's always, everybody does things a little bit differently. And really, nothing has changed there other than like HomeServe is now the service provider. So the relationship with respect to the billing tariff does still go through DPS. As far as what are the things that you need to do, which again, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room that are very well versed on the tariff provisions. But as we move from DPS actually going into the market versus HomeServe or any other third party, these are all the things that have to be available and kind of in play. Just from the questions that were submitted, and again, there's a response in there on the docket on this. I just wanted to summarize it to kind of have everything out here. Is there was a concern about potentially disparate treatment, and probably DEU maybe should speak to this, but my understanding is like no other third parties have approached DEU in order to get on this tariff. I don't know.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think that a lot of the disparate treatment discussion was around the customer information, the fact that HomeServe's allowed to use the customer information, and would we allow someone else who is able to tick all these boxes to use the customer information? I guess that's a legal question as to whether if we did or didn't, if that created disparate treatment. I think if the answer is it creates disparate treatment, then we probably have to share it. But we haven't done a legal review on that. Yes.
Just in the interest of full disclosure and understanding with respect to the cancellation issue that we were just looking at the slide before, in which it was represented that cancellation could be made at any time and full refund would be made. The letter actually states at the very end that cancellation, cancel at any time by calling home services. If you cancel within 30 days of your start date, you will get a full refund. Cancellations after 30 days will be effective at the end of the then current billing period. So that's not the same representation that was just made on the prior.
I can probably help clarify. What we're saying is, so our normal experience is customers aren't confused. So that's our normal refund policy. Obviously, we have concerns here that you guys have raised, and the public has raised that there might have been confusion about the letter. So we're saying we're saying to you that we're going to go above and beyond. And so if a customer calls up our call center and says, hey, I was confused about the relationship, I didn't appreciate that the service was optional. In those cases, and because of all the media that's been surrounding this, we're saying we're just going to refund them back, notwithstanding what our normal policy is. So we're offering to go above and beyond our normal policy.
But you also, you've done
any
that.
confusion.
I mean, Andrew mentioned examples where that's what they did.
Yeah, we have done it in the past.
That
Because
hasn't
again,
been
there are.
communicated to the customer.
Well, I don't think they said it was. I think that's what we clarified before, is that they're telling us that, not that they have told the customer that.
Right, but if any customer calls in and says, I was confused, then we're going to just refund them the whole thing, even though that's not what the terms and conditions say.
Sorry. So for Kelly in particular, you went through the third-party billing docket, and is there anywhere in that proceeding where the company discussed the potential that it or its affiliate, the utility discussed the potential that it or its affiliate would be in partnership with the entity that was seeking billing services from the utility?
I don't recall. I don't think so, Judd. You?
I can't find it.
Yeah.
I don't
In the, we were unaware in Utah until about mid-August that the discussions were going on. Mid-August, we learned that the discussions were going on, and most of the testimony had been filed by then. The testimony did include a section about DPS, and so we wanted to be upfront and forthright that DPS would likely be the first company to take advantage of the third-party billing tariff, to actually use that and be placed on bill, but that it would be out there for any third party that met those requirements that are listed there. They would have the option to do it. So there was a section about DPS. That section did not contemplate a partnership or the sale of DPS to another entity like HomeServe or someone else. If you'd asked me at the time, is that possible? My response to you would have been, we've been carefully crafting the third-party billing service so that any company can take advantage of it. Whether it was DPS, whether it was HomeServe, whether it was somebody else, we were crafting it so anyone could take advantage of it. So it wouldn't have at the time seemed like an issue to me that DPS was selling to HomeServe. In fact, I probably would have said, well, that's great. And now it's a non-affiliate company that's going to be on our bill, because that's exactly what we intended it for, is anyone, affiliate or not.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and others in the room can correct me if I'm wrong, that during all of the numerous discussions and things that you don't have a window on in those types of proceedings, it was clear that DPS was contemplating providing this service, and that's part of what led to the concerns expressed about fairness and that sort of even-handed treatment.
But I think it's also fair to say that it wasn't contemplated that DPS would necessarily be contracting with the third party, because I think we tried very hard to think of all the what ifs, and one what if that we didn't think of is, what if Dominion gives a third party, a third party access to customer data, and then are we going to require that all third parties get access to a customer data? So that was not contemplated.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
On your little flow chart there, I'm still a little bit confused with the commission agreement. You talked about two deals, and there was the commission one. Is that goes from Dominion Products up to the parent company, Dominion, or where does that fit into this?
The commission arrangement?
Yeah.
Is between DPS and HomeServe.
Okay.
So I'm going to go quick. This again is just kind of fact-based, so it's out there. This is in just information purposes. This is what it looks like on the bill. It's on page, I guess at the top of page 2. It shows charges for products and services, and then I guess this was an actual example that was redacted, obviously, for some information. So HomeServe products and services, and then on the right, if they had multiple plans, it would just show the multiple plans.
So they get 2 pages. The first page is their gas bill. The second page is their HomeServe bill, and then it gets mailed together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there tax on? Is there tax on the HomeServe stuff?
No.
Not
the state
Utah.
of Utah.
Okay.
Again, kind of, we started kind of with the customers, and that's kind of at the 4 from a DPS perspective. Again, we need, I don't know who decides this or kind of where we go from here, but if somehow that's not available to the customer, I mean, it's a negative impact for the customer, just from a lost benefit, like they were expecting the convenience along the bill, and then that would start a process. And again, I think some of this is part of the docket about how we would unwind if that's what where we went to. If there might be confusion about, hey, I wanted this and now it's getting taken away from me. If the customer doesn't respond to getting the alternate billing information, then over some period, I don't recall what it is, they could get dropped, and maybe they thought they had coverage and they didn't. And the last thing, and again, how well these, how big a deal it is for each customer is very different. Now I guess at least one of the methods is to provide credit card information and such, and again, just the super heightened sensitivity, not just in Utah but everywhere, about the data, which is the very next slide. And again, so that just is what it is. Customer list. Why is it important? We've already hit this. It's good from a customer response perspective, having accurate information, eliminates mismailings and such. As we look at the customer information, we talked about the information that's shared, that it's considered public information. Jen hit that earlier. But this, we can talk in more detail. I've got a very teeny IT background, but I know what these things are. But the information, even though it's considered public, that doesn't mean like we email information around and it goes on just unsecured network servers. That information is treated the exact same as if it were PII or personally identifiable information. I mean, it goes under the same scrutiny. And the file transfer protocol, the FTP sites, it's secure encrypted data. So initially you might think, well, it's going from DEU to DPS, now it's going to HomeServe. All of that is part of the diligence process and basically the technical people getting together. So to me, like, there's absolutely no difference in the integrity of the systems and the confidentiality and the treatment of that with those systems. HomeServe has, I'm sure, unbelievably high thresholds for kind of how they have to handle that information. And I put a note about the randomly generated identifier, but I guess, and again, there's other issues around the customer information. This is just more, we feel very, very confident, like that information isn't, can stuff get compromised? It happens. It happens to some of the biggest, even data companies in the U.S. and around the world. But we've got they call state of the art, or the best there is. I mean, that data, again, even though it's considered public, that doesn't really make a difference to us. It's important, and it's going to go under all these secure protocols and encrypted. Wow. we actually, I'll get to you just a second. I will say, even though we're done with the slide deck, there were some questions I think that you and your team had around the merger commitments and such.
Yeah.
We don't have slides in it, but you're going to address each of those, and then maybe a couple of those that are outside. So I'm sorry.
So going back to the customer information, some of the complaints that we received, the customers felt like you drilled down a little deeper than just the customer name and billing address. There was some additional information that was not in their, on their customer statement, like the names of businesses and things that received the mailing. So they're wondering if the information that was provided was more detailed than just a customer name and address.
Doug, you're stealing my thunder.
Okay.
And I'll answer your question. Before I do, did we answer your question on security?
Yeah, I understand that, and maybe the follow-up question would be then, can you share with us how many data breaches HomeServe, DPS, and DEU have had, and how many attempts of data breaches have been made, say, in the last 5 years?
So HomeServe is at 0.
You've never had an attempt to breach your data?
Attempts, I don't know. Actual breaches is 0. But we can find out attempts for you.
I don't know. I have no idea for Dominion.
Gary and I were just chatting. There's probably millions of attempts to breach our data. I mean, Dominion Energy's tied into the CIA, Homeland Security. We have very robust, secure systems.
Utah's state systems daily are
From the DEU perspective, I worked in data security, and this was years ago, but we were having thousands a day attempts at trying to get into our system, but no breaches that I'm ever aware of.
Dominion Energy's security is much tighter than Questar's was. I mean, I'm living through it. I think we can all attest to that.
So before you get into merger commitments and things, can I just ask, there's some sort of exclusivity arrangement between DPS and HomeServe, and I don't fully know its contours, but the question I have, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of the utility, not the utility's affiliates or others. And when I think about Dominion, the utility, administering it fairly, I think, are they willing to send out similar mailings and endorsements to their entire customer base, ignoring for a second the question of whether or not that's a good idea? Is it HomeServe's view that if the gas utility were to send a very similar, virtually identical letter on behalf of other service contract providers, that would somehow breach the agreement between DPS and HomeServe?
I think technically, I'm looking at Mike.
Yeah, I can take it. I mean, the agreement we have with DPS doesn't restrict the utility.
Yeah, so to answer your question, no. Technically, no. I think from a customer experience perspective, we certainly caution against that. But yeah, our contract is with DPS.
So the use of the Dominion logo by multiple entities to give someone else the same value you were getting from DPS wouldn't violate the contracts you have with DPS.
Technically, I don't think it.
I think it would violate our contract with DPS, but it doesn't impact Dominion Utah.
Yeah,
So, but to answer your question, yes, it impacts our relationship with DPS.
I got a question for HomeServe. So, three elements of this sort of, I think, we've highlighted. One, the customer information that HomeServe has access to. Two, the association with the logo and with the goodwill of Dominion Energy Utah. And then third, the billing arrangement, which is, I guess, where the utility participates from a compensation perspective in this set of arrangements. And that's true, I expect, right? And so is that, but it seems to me the third element really isn't that germane to what's going on here, right? So what I'm wondering, HomeServe, is do you bill independently in some of your other jurisdictions or locations when you provide these kind of services?
We do.
In concert with the utility?
Yeah, we do. I will say that with the lion's share of our investor-owned partnerships, not only on the energy side, but on the water side, we are billing on the utility bill. And that's really because, again, we're about the customer experience. It's more seamless for a customer to just check the box, and then we have that unique identifier that's put on their bill. We've done surveys where customers, when pulled, would rather have these products and services billed on their utility bill. But to answer your question, yes, it's just in an entity like Dominion, most of them are on the utility bill.
And the ones in the three other places where you're participating in Utah, the three other arrangements?
Those are all, we do the billing and administration, and they're much obviously smaller entities. We do use their logo, we do use their name. We do get, as I mentioned, name and address from Salt Lake, from the city of Salt Lake. The smaller entities typically just don't have the resources to bill it on the utility bill. I think, quite honestly, a lot of the smaller ones would even prefer it to be on the utility bill, but they just don't have the resources from an IT perspective to do it.
Thank you. Well,
Kelly? Yeah, I'll let you, can I answer Doug? I feel bad because I kind of told Doug I'll answer his question. So
Go
next
ahead,
question.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, I'm going to answer Doug, then we're going to get to you.
Okay.
So I think you're talking about like a landlord arrangement, right? Where where the bill is in the customer's name, but the building is in the landlord's name. And so instead of sending the HomeServe mailing to the individual customer with the bill, they send it to the landlord. And I think, and Michelle, jump in here, but I think the reason that's done is because they're really trying to, these are marketed just to residential customers and to the owners of the properties. And so in that case, Dominion Energy Utah is able to give them the landlord name instead of the customer name, because Dominion Energy Utah has both. Is that, do I add anything to that?
Yep.
So you were giving them the owner of the property name, not the account holder name.
Right.
Okay.
And Dominion Energy Utah has both of those. And so in order to kind of get the mailings to the right person, that's why they give them that information. Okay. So, I just want to thank Judd. Yes.
May I
I'm
ask?
sorry.
Okay, so I just have a couple of questions. My first question is there any overlap whatsoever of the board of directors on Dominion Energy with HomeServe?
I don't think so.
No.
I'll look at my,
No.
And does Mr. Kitsey have any relationship with Dominion Energy other than the contractual relationship?
I'm guessing Mr. Kitsey's a HomeServe person?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, the answer is, he's our CEO, the answer is
Okay.
no.
And then the third thing is, back to the statement that was on the board, and we talked about, well, that's not something that was in the letter. I'm wondering if, given the filing that Dominion has made with their various exhibits, Exhibit A in particular, whether that statement might be a reasonable statement to amend that proposed exhibit or something similar to it. So the customers would in fact know that if they misunderstood, that they could cancel, and it would cancel back to the date of inception.
Sure. I think it's great feedback.
Yeah.
We'd be open to that.
You can look forward to comments that will give you other suggestions.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
We look forward to those.
I would say though, in that scenario, that it probably makes sense to have a policy that a person can only do that once, right? You can't pay 3 months, you don't have a claim, you get your refund, you sign up the next month.
And just also to be fully transparent,
If you make a claim, you
the
probably don't get it
customer
back.
does make a claim, and then they say that they're confused, we're probably not gonna refund.
Yeah.
But I don't think your ask is unreasonable, and again, as we mentioned, we're here to listen and take feedback, and our goal is to try to get this program back up and limit that customer confusion.
Kelly, where's your commitments?
Yes, thank you.
Hit it.
Thank you for keeping me on track. So I want to thank Judd. Judd came all the way from Ogden to answer this one question.
This is
He's
like
been
getting
waiting
invited
long
to the
enough.
Super Bowl. You get invited to the biggest party of the year and
I
get
said,
to be a
Judd,
part
I'm
of
not
it.
answering this question. You have to answer it yourself. So number 17, given the asset purchase agreement was apparently completed before the commission's order, please indicate whether the following individuals had knowledge of the agreement. Judd Cook.
I had knowledge that there were discussions occurring between HomeServe and DPS. I was not privy to those discussions. I was not a party to those discussions. I was not included in those discussions. When I was informed that there were discussions happening, as I mentioned earlier, I thought, well, it's indifferent. I'm indifferent towards it. Any third party can bill on the tariff that I was trying to propose, and so whether it's HomeServe, DPS, or anyone else, it was the same.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your.
Free to go.
Now that would be like leaving the Super Bowl at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Just getting started.
Jen, how about you? Same question.
Pretty much the same answer.
All right.
Yeah, people in Utah were aware that that sale was being contemplated, and people, for the reasons Judd stated, it didn't raise any eyebrows. We crafted that billing tariff specifically so that any qualified party could utilize it. So.
Great. Looks like we answered 19. There was a document entitled Background Information on HomeServe prepared exclusively for Dominion dated November 2016. It mentions customer service in many places. Is HomeServe's customer the utility? The utility's customers are those utility customers who are paying for HomeServe service. Depending on the slide, it's either utilities customers or the customers that are paying for HomeServe service. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. 24, what other services or products does American Electric Power offer its customers besides HomeServe's? We don't know. I don't think any of us have knowledge of that. 25, has Dominion or any other utility been subject to any fine resulting from HomeServe's business?
We have had one partner that was allegedly in breach of their tariff and paid a fine as a result, out of the 550 partners that we have.
I'm sorry, so you paid a fine to some,
In the KCC, Kansas
And
Corporation.
it wasn't HomeServe that paid the fine, it was the utility that paid the fine.
Couple merger provisions. Merger 7 talks about the Dominion Questar Gas will have its own local operating management located in Salt Lake City. We talked about the approval of the sharing of the customer information. There's another question. Please identify which local operating management position signed the contract. I don't think anyone locally signed the contract. Is that's a correct statement?
What is the contract?
I think the contract is the contract between HomeServe and DPS.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So no one from Utah signed it. And then the review.
Kelly?
Yeah.
What, I think that's a DPU question, right?
Yeah.
And I think the question that, the thought that underlied it was answered earlier, and that was that local DEU management did approve the use of the customer information by DPS.
Okay.
And
that answered the question.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there was a question about the marketing materials that went out. The manager of corporate communications for DEU and the general manager of customer relations for DEU reviewed those.
Who are those two? I don't have everyone's title numbers.
Darren Shepard, Brad
Darren
Marcus.
and Brad Marcus, okay.
So I'm still back on so there is some kind of contract or agreement between the utility and HomeServe to bill for these services, right? Is that
billing service?
I don't know if it's between
just under the tariff only. Is there anything that
there is a billing agreement between DEU and DPS?
But there's no agreement between DEU and HomeServe.
That's correct.
So DPS is a conduit for access to the Dominion bill for HomeServe, which lies behind that.
Yeah, that billing agreement has language in it which says that the service may be provided by DPS or by a third party that's approved by the utility.
So
provided they meet all this.
Provided they meet all the qualifications.
Okay, I get.
DPS.
I missed that a little
Yeah,
bit. So
say
the
that
tariff
again.
allows a service contract provider access to the bill.
Yes.
In this instance, you're telling me that service contract provider is DPS, that then has this other agreement with HomeServe.
Which is also a service
Which,
contract.
yeah.
provider.
So,
Right.
yeah. So in essence, your DPS is a service contract provider that's not really providing service contracts within the state. It's just allowing access to the bill for HomeServe, in essence, in effect.
In effect, the language that does contemplate that there might be a third party actually offering the service that's being billed.
And is it that agreement that addresses the, I'll call it, obligation of the utility to provide customer information for the purpose of solicitation?
No.
Okay, is that memorialized in some way?
We have a commitment with DPS, but I'm not sure of your arrangements with DEU.
Right, you're referring to the commission agreement.
Yes.
Yeah. The commission agreement between DPS and HomeServe is the only place where the sharing of data is contemplated or discussed.
Or agreed upon?
Yeah.
Quid pro quo type of situation.
So what's gonna be on the bill? Did you show us that? Like,
Yeah.
is it HomeServe?
It's HomeServe, yes. And then the name of the plan. We're limited
Right
to 30
there.
characters on the bill.
Separate page, right?
So this would be page 2, and at the top it would, so this is kind of a summary of your bill on page 1. At the top of page 2, you would get this. It would be all by itself.
Again, with the plans listed.
Right, the
on the
plans.
right.
Yeah, so if I sign up for multiple plans, I have them, listed out here.
And HomeServe's phone number is there as well, that 1833 number.
So maybe if I can just speak a little bit to this question of local management. So Colleen Bell is our Vice President General Manager of DEU, and she reports to Craig Wagstaff, who's actually over both the operations for the LDC in Wexboro in Utah, as well as all of the operations in Ohio and West Virginia. So not only do we have local management for the utility here, but the management for the entire distribution group also happens to be located in Utah. Let's see, merger commitment 32 talks about the advisory board. So, as for those of you who were involved in the merger and those of you who weren't, we set up a Western Region Advisory Board, and the purpose of it was to share with this board community issues, government relations, environmental stewardship, economic development, and other related activities that affect Dominion and Dominion-Questar Gas's local stakeholders. This group meets, I think, 3 times a year. And it's made up of local leaders as well as management from Salt Lake and Virginia, and so they discuss issues. They did not talk about HomeServe. They've been more focused on our core businesses in their meetings. Our last meeting was in November, and so in those meetings, those prior meetings, they've not talked about HomeServe. I think that was one of the questions. I think we answered that one. I think we answered the rest. Am I missing any? Or are there any other questions that?
Can I ask one? So
Yeah.
in your third-party billing tariff, it says Dominion Energy will only contract with third parties, meaning for this billing service, if it determines in its reasonable discretion that allowing the entity to utilize the Dominion Energy bill is not likely to adversely impact Dominion Energy's customers. Given the response to this and potential confusion and the concerns about fairness, is it your view that that standard's met?
It's my view that we need to make some changes to the law.
And I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, the standard as the facts and circumstances were when that decision was made was met, right? It's just not, I mean, this has happened, and obviously it's counter to the thinking at the time. Because the expectation was absolutely it's going to be something about it.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
and I mentioned earlier that this was reviewed by local management of Energy Utah, and I think one of the things that gave us a lot of comfort. I mean, I knew this was going to go out 2 weeks before it went out, but one of the reasons why I guess we were comfortable was the partner we were working with. I mean, HomeServe's not brand new to the game, and then as I mentioned, they've got many partners in many states, many utilities, and that gave us a level of comfort that not only are they a good provider, but that the materials would be well received.
So is it your view that the endorsement of a specific company is consistent with even treatment of service contract providers who want to use third-party billing?
That's probably a legal question.
It's a good answer, Ken.
I mean, when you had the involvement of the Utah folks, did you raise concerns that Utah customers, I mean, we don't have competitive choice here, and frankly, the Dominion Energy brand is not well established. You know, almost everyone I know still calls you Questar.
Right.
And were those issues that were raised as to why things might unfold differently in Utah than in Ohio or Virginia?
I'll say from my experience, it was raised, but obviously we didn't get it right. I mean, we just.
Right, okay. And honestly, I know I've said this already, but I just can't go over the fact that that very second sentence in the letter is vague about whose responsibility is what. Because some of the, first of all, my office doesn't, I mean, we're the consumer advocates, but we explicitly have to represent the customer class, and so we forward the customer complaints to the Division of Public Utilities. And I still had several who said, no, thank you, I don't want to be forwarded, I want to speak to Michelle Beck. And so, now some of them were people who knew me, I'll own that, but not all of them, so, and that was what I personally heard is, when did it change? When did the utility stop being responsible up to the meter? And so now I went back and read it carefully, and I see that if you read it carefully, but that's just the part, and I think.
I could say, like, I'm sorry to interrupt, like, there was no, like, malintent there, and that's obviously something that we need to.
Right, and I understand, but to me, I mean, I get those other letters from Salt Lake, and so to me, that is a key difference, and it's disappointing to me that Darren Shepard and Brad Marcus read those and signed off on them. It makes me think they don't understand their customers very well.
Can you explain?
On that happy note, maybe we should adjourn.
Anytime you give me the last word, I'm in favor of it.
I'm not going to give you the last word. Can you explain more about the commission agreement?
Come up with one more.
And how that works and who gets the money?
That's.
I missed the question, I'm sorry, Doug.
That's illegal.
Just talk, just in general, on the commission agreement, how it's structured and who gets the money.
So that's maybe a question for Gary, you know that better than I do.
Yeah, it's the actual kind of meat and potatoes of the overall deal. It's the one that has a lot of the details in it about the process for putting out marketing materials, the review of those marketing materials. It talks about the various affiliate territories and non-affiliate territories, and what the parties are going to do with regard to the sale by DPS over to HomeServe of existing contracts in those various territories. It's got information in it about the non-compete, the exclusivity. It's got a lot of information in it, and it's the agreement, like I said, that kind of provides the real meat of
I
the
think Doug's just
relationship.
trying to follow the money. Where does the money go? It goes from, HomeServe makes a payment to, or makes payments to DPS that are related to the number of contracts that DPS can generate. Is that
Talking about the commission. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then that money stays with DPS or gets paid as a dividend to the parent company, right?
Yeah, I mean, without going into the mechanics, that's essentially right.
I mean, was that part of the confidential information as far as like the?
So
The numbers, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I'm
I don't
sorry
know
to
about the
interrupt.
numbers. The commission agreement, I think, has been produced.
It's
The
all
other
on
thing,
pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been produced.
The other thing, yeah, the other thing that I would say.
So I'm just saying, like,
That's my-
and again, I don't know how these things work, but I mean, can we?
So there, two things. One, if you want to start talking about numbers associated with customers, we've talked about that. But the second thing I didn't want to get lost in the mix is, under the tariff for billing services, the utility does get compensated, and that happens via an agreement between the utility and Dominion Products and Services. That's the agreement we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it's
So that
compensation for the
compensation
cost
does
of being
happen.
on the bill.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
but not for the.
Yeah.
No. You're right.
It's related to the cost of preparing the bill.
Correct.
And sending the bill to the customer along with the utility bill.
Right.
That's the tariff.
Right, but.
Yeah, it's governed by the tariff. Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there likewise a compensation given based on customer information?
No.
I think no.
No, there's not.
No.
The commission, I mean, essentially HomeServe is, we're billing the customers. We collect the money, right? Dominion, it's on Dominion's bill. The cash ultimately comes into HomeServe, right, after it goes on the bill. And then there's a commission share back, the DPS. So there's no purchase, there's no data purchase amount necessarily.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's sort of a.
but the access to the customers with the mailing was a part of the transaction and part of the consideration in the deal. So HomeServe got access to those customers and paid something for it. It's just a question of where that payment is. It's somewhere in the contract. It wasn't a freebie that was thrown in.
And it's not a specifically
the-
pointed out amount, is
But
it?
I will say, just from like the name and address from our perspective, it's to eliminate customer confusion and to have happier customers, quite honestly. It's for the customer experience. The actual intrinsic value, quite honestly, is limited.
Sure, yeah, you can go buy that data
Well,
pretty
that's-
cheap.
Yeah,
right?
There's several academic papers that say that that's not true.
So
That customer information in our day and age is actually very valuable, and people are not being compensated for that information.
Well, I feel like we should be careful right now. Aren't we
Yeah.
crossing the line into advocacy and
Yeah, we're having a debate, so I took the words out of my mouth. Are we done with really questions about the facts? Because that's what this should be about.
I think so. I
largely.
do just have that, I mean, what, the statement I just made, is that inaccurate in the sense that, I mean, the customer names and addresses were included as part of the deal, right? So in a sense, they were part of the value offered. I hear you saying that you don't think that was necessarily worth that much as part of the deal. And that's fine, but they are part of the deal.
yes.
Yep. That's fair.
Correct.
I want to thank everyone for joining today. Thank you especially for those from HomeServe and Dominion that traveled to create this as a team. Final questions? Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.